Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Discourse on Vanguard Life. I am Precious Chukudi. All right, Nigerians woke up to a very sad news this morning about that the former head of the interim national government, Chief Ernest Shonekan'S, that he died this morning. And if you can remember, I mean, he ruled from August 26 to November 17, 1993, until he was overthrown in a palace coup led by late General Sani Abacha, who was Secretary of the Defense. Now, joining me to talk about the late Ernest Shonekan'S is Mr. Gboyega Amoboye, who is the former new Nigerian chief political correspondent, Concord Press, also assistant political editor, Abuja bureau chief. He covered the National Assembly in the Second Republic, Third Republic, and Fourth Republic till 2001. And he's going to be sharing his thoughts on who Ernest Shonekan'S is, and also Bosun Oluwabusayomi, a political correspondent and Lagos bureau chief of the Tribune newspaper in the 90s. Good afternoon, sirs. It's good to have you join me on the show today.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Very good afternoon.
All right, all right. Let's just delve in and let's talk about the man Shonekan'S. I mean, he's 85. He died, and people who do not have an idea of who he really is. Would you like to give us? That's I'm talking to Mr. Bosun. Would you like to give us, a general overview of who Ernest Shonekan'S was?
Chief Shonekan'S was he was the MD at UAC, and he retired. An easygoing man, an easygoing personality, a complete gentleman, and from Abeokuta, Ogun State, as well as the same state with the same town with late Chief Abiola and former President Obasanjo. And to me, largely, that was what qualified him for the choice of the role he was asked to play as interim national, at the head of the interim national government.
All right. There's this general view that Shonekan came into as a stopgap for between the military rule and our journey back to democracy. Now, a lot of people do not really have enough information about him. But can you? I'm talking to Mr. Gboyega. Now, can you give us like a general rundown of how he became Nigeria's head of state?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, let me sympathize with the family of the late Baba Shonekan'S. He was a very active Nigerian. He played his role as a leader of as a good leader in the country, because being a former director general or former head of a conglomerate like UAC deserves a lot of commendation, and he acted well his role before he came into the political trouble water, where he found himself in November 20, in August 27, 1993, following the annulment of June 12 and the sacking of Babangida himself, who annulled the election on the August, who was driven away from power on August 26, 1993. Following that period, let me call it a period of Babangida was trying to avoid a sort of interregnum between the period he was removed from power and the time he installed another person to take over for him. So in the process, he looked at a credible person in Shonekan'S that Nigerians will respect, especially coming from Abeokuta, the same town with the Abiola winner of June 12 election that was annulled. Taking part that with somebody like himself from Abiola's town as the interim head of state, he will be respected. So that's how Shonekan'S became the interim head of state on August 27th. Unfortunately, he wasn't an active politician. because but at his level I won't say it's not a position because you cannot be at that top level of a conglomerate like UAC without being at least a passive politician. That might one way or the other pave the way for him or recommended him as the interim head of state. He came to power in a turbulent period of that country. While we can blame him for accepting the power, we can as well not blame him for allowing for we cannot blame him for allowing for a steady transition from where Babangida thought he would leave it and give it to another person. Unfortunately, that period was turbulent for him. I have said, some people will blame him for taking it, especially coming from Abela's town. Why should he be the person to be used? So it's a pity for him that he came at that power at that period. I did not find it easy as the head of state.
All right, of course we know that he had, like, the shortest tenure, and I remembered, the fact that he wasn't really generally received by many. For example, the presentation of the budget 1993. Can you speak to that effect?
Yes, in 1993, he came as like every other president or head of state in power. He came sometime in October 1993 to present his annual budget against the following year. Unfortunately for him, the National Assembly was occupied by pro-Naneko activists. Bola Tinubu was the leader of the Senate. Ahmed Buti was the Senate president. And Abba Legoge was deputy Senate president. And all of them from SDP because SDP controlled the majority of the National Assembly then. So when he came to that day, he came to present the budget around 10 a.m., claimed respectively in a white flowing gown, as usual of him. He came to meet virtually an empty national hall at the International Conference Center, which was the interim temporary Senate then, or National Assembly. The members of National Assembly, the Senate in particular, they all agreed to boycott the presentation. So when the place was empty, what the National Assembly members, office officials, the clerk in particular, what he did was to go and look for civil servants who occupy empty seats at the same Shonekan'S. The House of Reps, many of them were there, but the man who presided that was the speaker of this house. That's Agubuanukwe. So when Shonekan came, he presented his budget not to members of National Assembly. The president of the Senate is supposed to act as the chairman in the joint sitting. That was also president of the Senate. So instead of the senators, instead of the complete house, they presented to the civil servants and a full cross section of the House of Assembly members, House of Assembly members. So after the presentation, I just ran after him. I said, "Sir, you came here, you present your budget not to National Assembly members but to civil servants. How do you feel about it?" He said, "Well, when I came, I saw people seated and I presented my budget to them." So it worked out.
All right, to you, Mr. Bosun. Are you there, Mr. Bosun?
Yes. How with you? How with you?
All right. We saw what happened to Chief Ernest Shonekan, but I would like to ask you, in your own view, what do you think? Why do you think he was shoved aside by Abacha?
Well, with the benefit of insight, that was due to Abacha's ambition, you know, because Chief Ernest Shonekan, may so rest in peace, he never showed, he was not like Mr. Oboye said, he wasn't a politician, he wasn't an overt politician. If we ever played politics, that was boardroom politics and all whatnot, but he was not a politician per se. And we have people who were real politicians. So Abacha only capitalized on his office and his person to seize power from him. Abacha had everything going for him. After Babangida stepped aside, Abacha was the next person in rank. And except for him to have assumed power, except for him coming in as, because Nigerians were really tired of military governance. Everybody was clamoring for civilian government. Unfortunately, that was an opportunity, a big opportunity for the military to hand over, for Babangida to hand over the reins of power to the civilians. But he didn't use the opportunity well. He only left, he attempted, because what he did was to leave a vacuum, asking Chief Ernest, asking him to come and take over, to come and take over the seat without Nigerians voting for him. Record is not an arms-carrying man. He wasn't in the military. He was not in the political class. Ask him to come and take over power just to fill the vacuum that could have been created. To me, it's not good enough, because there was no way Chief Shonekan'S could have conducted an election with the military that have always tasted power, that have always been in power, waiting in the wings. So it was an easy way for, we had it in some quarters that it was even pre-planned between late General Abacha and Babangida, that once Babangida stepped aside, they put Shonekan, then Abacha will ask Shonekan to get out of the seat. And that was what played out eventually. That's what we all saw. And that's what we had today.
Hmm. Oh, oh,
So good enough. We are back. We are back to the political era, and Nigeria is making tremendous progress.
hmm. All right. What would you say? That's Mr. Bosso. What would you say is quite different from his time and this current time? Are there like drastic changes from when he was, a former, head of state till now?
I didn't get that, please.
Okay, I was asking and saying, what changes would you say that you've seen from the time when he was, a former head of state versus now that we're in this current administration? What would you say that are some of the things that are quite different?
Quite a lot.
Okay.
Democracy is not. Is it me? Democracy is not an overnight thing. It evolves. It evolves, but you don't wake up somebody and say, "Yeah, start running." You know, you give him time, and you give him time. You wake up, you stretch your body and do this, do that before you can run. You prepare yourself to run. That's the way I see Nigeria's democracy. We've been on it. We've been at it for quite some time, and we are still evolving. It's going to take a while before we get there. The American democracy that we are practicing, America did not get to where they are today just overnight. It took them years. It took them decades. It may not take us. It may not take Nigeria as long as it did some other countries of the world that are in democracy, but definitely we'll get there. So it's a great development. It's a great step we've had so far.
Mm. All
And I
right.
believe it's good for us.
All right, to you, Mr. Gboyega. I'm aware that you one time you interviewed him a couple of times. I would like you to share your experience with us on how Chief Ernest Shonekan was. What was your experience like with him?
Um, are you hearing me? Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. You can go ahead.
Let me just fill what I call a lacuna about how Abacha took over from Shonekan. He did not take over directly. There was an incident. Justice Dolapo Akisoya ruled Shonekan's government illegal on November 10, 1993. Between that, immediately that election, Shonekan was thrown out of power. There was a lacuna between that period and on the 17th when Abacha took over. Abacha was the chief minister of defense. So he took over from Shonekan. The problem with political observers have been asking is the constitution allows the Senate president to take over from the where there is no president, where there is no vice president, the Senate president will take over from the in the absence of the president. When Shonekan'S election was declared illegal, local observers felt that the Senate president Ahmed Buti would have stepped in according to the constitution of the acting president when the time things will be reordered. So that did not happen. Why it did not happen? Maybe the activities of that period, the question of that period, we have to explain that one at a later date. So the period I met with Shonekan was that on the day of that presentation of budget. The way I saw it was it was a quiet person. It's not the tribe that the tribe that throws his weight around. But I can read it in that day that was not happy doing a job he did not prepare for, a job that will not earn him any glory, a job that will earn him that will not earn him the grace that he deserved at his level, at his age, and how far he has gone to. Somebody who has climbed the got to the mountain top to collapse overnight. I saw that emotion in him. He was not happy with himself. The way I saw him that day. It's all the time at his level. Somebody who have gone to the peak of his career, he should be resting in his place, and somebody who is from the same place with Abiola to have been given that type of task. Why he did not accept what he didn't like is what I don't know. Because some people who have said no are not for that type of business. And once he's supposed to run out of the country. You can recall the case of this man was asked to take over. Brigadier Wudipe was asked to take over after Ernest was assassinated in 1967. He ran away. He did not take it because he knew the implication of taking it. I expect when you were like Shonekan at that level to have no implication of taking a job he did not prepare for, a job he did not prepare for, and a job that will do no honor. So the way I saw that day, it was a man in remote.
All right, sir. I would like to ask, in what ways would you say that Chief Ernest Shonekan, contributed, to nation building?
Um, that was what I mean.
Now, I'm talking to you, Mr. Boyega.
Okay. Um, I would say I would say that this area of contribution should be the area of the economy. For somebody to be chairman of UAC, a conglomerate of many companies, one way or the other, he has contributed to the economy, he has contributed to the well-being of people, because UAC then should be seen as group, should be seen as the largest employer of labor in the country, apart from the government. So he has contributed his quota. But politically, I don't even know whether he has done well or not, because if he did not accept the job, as I've said, what would be the problem? Would there be a sort of crisis between the period when Babangida is not there, there is somebody who is asking, by taking that job, it was an unpleasant job, but I think he did it because he wants peace. He wants peace. But why should he be him? Somebody who is from Abiola's town. Why should he be him, who has gone to the peak of his career in USA? I feel like it should be another person. But one way or the other, going by what he has achieved, he has contributed to the nation building, economically in particular.
All right, Mr. Bosson, I would like you to react to what Mr. Boyega is saying. Do you agree with what he's saying about how Shonekan, contributed to nation building? Or what are your own personal thoughts on it?
Yes, my reaction to his contribution to nation building is in line with what Mr. Boyega said. And that's that if he had not taken that office, if he had turned it down, then we would have had a lacuna. There would have been nobody to take the space, at least in the interim. And of course, naturally, the military will still have continued. Somebody will have continued like they eventually did. So it was the interest, I believe it was the interest of his fatherland, of Nigeria, that took him over to accepting that office to serve. So he does his contribution to the nation. Either way way you look at it, he played that role. He played that role, and we cannot now we can't fault him for playing the role.
All right, we pray that may his soul rest in perfect peace. And thank you so much, Mr. Bosun Oluwabusayomi. He's a political correspondent and Lagos Bureau Chief of Tribune Newspaper. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Mr. Gboyega Amoboye, former new Nigerian Chief Political Correspondent, Concord Press. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. You can go on our website, www.vanguardnigerian.com, to find out more of our top stories. I am Precious Chukudi, and thank you for watching.